When it comes to the assassination of a head of state, I just wanted to quickly discuss this. Again, there is simply no justification for that. This is a violation of the laws of Article 2.4. The only exception to this, there are two exceptions to this, and those are, one is that you're authorized by the UN Security Council to do so. So there's a Security Council vote, they vote in favor of this, there are no vetoes, and that basically allows you to take action. So this could be, imposing a no-fly zone on a country like Libya. The second exception to the Article 2.4 prohibition on the use of force is self-defense. So a state that has been attacked by another can use force to defend itself, to thwart that armed attack. Now, there are two scenarios in which this can happen for Israel or the US to justify their attack under self-defense. We're on day 3 of the Israeli-US attacks on Iran. What we've witnessed so far are widespread attacks across the country, targeting civilian and military infrastructure. We've seen attacks on girls' schools, dozens of civilians, dozens of school children being killed in this as well. But perhaps most significantly, we're looking at these decapitating attacks, which have taken out the Iranian military and civilian leadership, and perhaps most significantly, the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who was both a political and religious leader. Now, if anybody is still is naive enough to think that there is any form of legality under international law for this, then allow me to disabuse you of that notion. What we see here is essentially what governs this is known as the use of force, whether force is permitted against another state, whether Israel or the US had some cause that allowed them to justify their attacks. And this is governed by Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, which essentially states that you can't attack any other country. You cannot violate their territorial integrity or political independence. It's a blanket ban, essentially. The only exception to this, there are two exceptions to this, and those are, one is that you're authorized by the UN Security Council to do so. So there's a Security Council vote, they vote in favor of this, there are no vetoes, and that basically allows you to take action. So this could be, imposing a no-fly zone on a country like Libya, or troops going into Somalia, or things like that. So you had a Security Council mandate there. This clearly is not the case. We saw, the Trump administration, the Israelis are never in favor of trying to get permission anywhere, but the Trump administration never really bringing this up at the UN. In fact, just today we had French officials stating that this is something that should have been discussed at the international stage, at the UN, for these purposes. The second exception to the Article 2.4 prohibition on the use of force is self-defense. So a state that has been attacked by another can use force to defend itself, to thwart that armed attack. Now, there are two scenarios in which this can happen for Israel or the US to justify their attack under self-defense. The first is that an armed attack from Iran took place against either of these, and that certainly isn't the case, right? We have seen no form of aggression really that's taken place in these recent months from Iran against Israel or the US as such. In fact, they were negotiating right now. And it seems a highly perfidious act that you call people to negotiate and then you violate and go ahead and attack them. The other possibility is that Iran was about to attack Israel or the US. And again, there is simply no evidence. In fact, what we have, the news that is coming out is that the US authorities, they saw or they got intelligence that Khamenei will be meeting with, the Iranian leadership, and they deliberately targeted that, and that's why they moved up really their time frame for attack. And again, all of this in the midst of negotiations with Iran. So yeah, there is simply no justification under international law for this. When it comes to the assassination of a head of state, I just wanted to quickly discuss this. Again, there is simply no justification for that. This is a violation of the laws of Article 2.4 clearly, but even if, say, we put that aside and we say, the war started, targeting a head of state who is not a combatant, who is not actively participating in hostilities like that, is simply not justified. He wasn't even a military commander like that. He wasn't giving tactical decisions. And so the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei is I think, again, a grave breach of international law. But the real question here is, what is the continued relevance of international law? when you have states like the US and many Western countries who haven't really condemned these actions, who've simply said, oh, we're not part of this, like the US, like the UK and France and countries like that, saying that we're not part of these, but they haven't really criticized such blatant violations of the UN Charter. You'll have a number of international scholars saying, oh no, this is not the death of international law. This, international law is evolving and this and that. But frankly speaking, in my personal opinion, I don't think international law or our recent conception of international laws after the post World War II order that has been established, it's never had a threat as serious as this one. And because of that, it's going to be extremely difficult, if even possible, for international law to recover and gain the modicum of respect and sanctity that it had before. So I think this is going to be something that is truly, truly damaging to international law, not only with the past 2 years, the attacks in Gaza, Russian aggression with regards to Ukraine, damaging for international law, but this in particular, taking out Ayatollah Khamenei, the head of state there, previously the US going into Venezuela and capturing Maduro, President Maduro, all of these I think are not a very positive sign for the future of international law, and countries will have to come together to really ensure that the sanctity that international law enjoyed is its return to that.